Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Press Coverage, part of Going for Two. Going for Two Live, and here I am, Kyle Senra. Joining me for this episode is Peter Howard. So, Peter, thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, thanks. How about yourself?
Pretty decent. Yeah, it's things are going as we're moving. We're closing on the Super Bowl. The fantasy football point scoring season's done as we kind of get into draft season. And I know a lot of people provide different types of draft content, but Peter, you have something that you do share with the fantasy community called the right now you're calling it the market share database. So tell us about this college evaluation tool.
Prospect database, MS database. Yeah, it has many names, but essentially I'm just tracking as many college statistics as I can from various websites, calculating a few of my own and trying to get of them so we can, prosper a little bit. Who have you got, by the way? Who do you think's winning the Super Bowl?
I think the Chiefs will win. I think just the one thing about the Packers, a couple weaknesses on the defense that could be easily exploited, mostly Kevin King. I'm a Packers fan. You listen to the Full Press Packers pod, even the most recent Full Press Fantasy pod all ran about it there. But I don't know that the Chiefs have that defensively, that one weak spot of the secondary that, Tom Brady, if there's a weakness, he'll always exploit it. I don't know that exists with the Chiefs, so I think he's going to have a tough time. And I think Mahomes will prove to be too much.
Fair enough.
How about you? What are you calling?
No opinion.
Okay.
I could care less which team wins or loses. I'm not a fan of teams. Yeah, I guess my money would be on the Chiefs. I would enjoy the Tom Brady story if it were to happen. But I just learned not to bet against Mahomes. That's my basic rule.
Yeah, absolutely. And so last episode's guest, J. Mike, sense of community. And the thing about your database that I do find quite extraordinary, you put a lot of work into it, but you also offer it for free. So this is something that everyone can access anytime, whenever they want, not behind a paywall. It's completely available for everyone. So I think that's something that needs to be shouted out, and it's part of the motivation to bring you on here.
Well, it's all a shill. I'm just in it for the Twitter followers, so also, most of it's publicly. Well, all of it's publicly available data. I was finding it where to start. I used to listen to a lot of podcasts and read a lot of articles about market share, which turns out to just be a fancy way of saying percentage and how good it was. And breakout age was awesome. And there was no real way of going and looking for myself. And so I just started collecting and copying and pasting numbers, just try and get a look at new prospects and what I could see them. Because outside of listening to someone read through it, instead of just mentioning the highlights, right? And then you're never really sure what to think of a guy they didn't mention, or if they don't do a podcast that week or that year on a particular play, you don't know. So I was just looking for a way for looking at it myself instead of individually doing the calculation in my head when I looked at their page. And Player Profile has got a lot of statistics, but it's not lined out in a way that I wanted, in a way I wanted to see it. So I just started copying and pasting, like I say, data from what's it called now? It's Pro Football Reference's sister site.
StatHead, data.
Yeah, it's called College Football Statistics.
You have to College Football Reference, yeah.
You have to type in sportsreference.com to get there. And obviously from there, I wanted to, some measure of seeing who was good, because I've only been playing fantasy for so long, so I didn't know who was really good in 2004. And so I started trying to hook it up to NFL statistics, which seemed to be the difficult part, to be honest with you, because players' names are listed differently, especially from college to the NFL. And so it was just this ham process, and then eventually Sean Slavin came in and was like, "Man, I can't even bear to watch you anymore. This is painful." As someone who can scrape data and is a data scientist and actually smart person, and so he gave me a big dump of data from scraping, I think it's called, College Football Reference. Or Sports Reference, sorry. And from there, it just became obsessive, trying to wrangle in all that data and all the extra information and hook them up to college statistics. Most recently, Matt Spencer has been helping me attach them to IDs that can be more readily attached to NFL stats as well. And so, yeah, we've got basically a 20-year history of everything I can think we know that is at least public, and you can kind of make up your own mind. And that's kind of my thing. Like, I'll listen to the experts and do what they say, but I also want my own opinion, you know? And so that's where it's from. And if you ever check it out, make sure you check out the sources tab, because I'm just the lummox willing to put in unspeakably boring man hours to actually wrangle the data. But in that tab, there's a list of several people that, like Sean Slavin, who have just gifted the data, and also the websites that it's from. And I recommend, if you're going to support anyone, follow those guys, support those websites, because without public data, we're just, begging for scraps, really. So yeah, that's what I recommend from it.
And again, this is, you're kind of looking at how, these college prospects, kind of how do we get some context of who we should be drafting in our fantasy drafts coming up. And this is sort of your way to contextualize is going through the numbers.
Well, yeah, I've had to learn how to blend in with nerds a lot, because if you're looking at numbers, all the nerds are the ones that've got the answers. So I've learned the buzzwords and the basics rudimentary of statistical analysis, just so I can blend in and get them to tell me secrets, and then beat them in fantasy. That's the goal. So, I've had to learn what an R squared is. Turns out it's not a box. And just some basic stuff. I'm very rudimentary and I'm amateurish, but as long as I beat some nerds, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. And now this point in the fantasy off season, which is not an off season, it's just a different part of the season we're learning with Dynasty, over at DLF at least. It's really difficult because everyone wants to set their opinions in stone, and I want to know how well they compare to past prospects. That's my process, not some fancy number that's going to solve who's good and who's not good. I kind of want to just know, did they do what those players who have done well in the past do? Basic, simple, are they as good as T.Y. Hilton or Stefan Diggs if they're in the fourth round, that kind of thing. And we don't have draft capital to really compare that way. So I like to borrow all of the signal from the NFL, because draft capital tells us a lot about who's going to get opportunity and who's going to force the issue or has to force the issue if they do. And then just basically compare them. I've learned to model, and not in the fancy way. Anyone who's seeing the stream knows I'm not modeling. This is not the look, right?
Neither am I.
There's a nerdy thing where you use numbers to predict other numbers. That's basically modeling. And so I've learned to do the basics of that. But even that's just roughly a guide. I more want to see how they produce their numbers, if it compares to, and who it compares to in the past. And then, like I say, draft the right players and win.
I mean, it's funny. And here we are talking about college prospects, American football college prospects. We've got, you can tell by his accent, he's from England. I'm from Canada. So it's very international, this whole thing. And even if someone wasn't speaking English, even though that connects all those three of those countries, it's the language of numbers that connects it all. So how long have you kind of had a relationship with numbers and kind of enjoyed the appreciation of it?
Well, first off, I'd like to say I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm from Kentucky. I live in Kentucky. This is what we all sound like down here. Don't force your stereotypes on me, bruh.
Sorry.
But no, nothing. I don't. I read that question in the sheet. I'm I don't know. I find numbers fascinating. They don't. I do like logic. And I like understanding things that are logical, because weirdly it's not always common sense. I think we mistake common sense for logical arguments all the time. I think the difference for me is that something that's common sense can be said either way and sound just as right, whereas something that's logical is in some way locked into an imperative. It can't be true, or it can be true, and that can kind of it's kind of a decision. There's a decision point there. Wait, what was the question? Oh, what do I find fascinating? So I find that useful, and also, again, as someone from Kentucky, clearly, originally, I don't have a lot of experience with. I didn't have a lot of experience with NFL football. I was more into basketball, because that's what Kentucky fans like a lot. Okay, yeah, I was into actual football. I was into football. I was into rugby, not cricket. It's boring as crap unless you're playing it. And so I was playing, and I enjoyed the sports, and I loved the people I was meeting, and I really loved the game. I'd never really played a fantasy sport before NFL, and I wanted to get better. And despite having played a lot of sports and gotten pretty average at most of them, I feel like I can underwhelm in most sports. I feel pretty strong in that statement.
Yeah.
I felt like I can understand sport. I really enjoy it. There's not a sport, even cricket, really, that I can't watch and enjoy myself. I have literally watched snooker championships and enjoyed the crap out of that stuff, man. So I really enjoy sport, but I didn't think I could like elevate or do better than someone else by watching American football and go, oh, that's obviously the guy that's going to be Saquon Barkley. I don't know. They literally all look incredibly impressive to me, and it's fun to watch. That's all I know. But I did know a little math, and I really enjoyed the logic of algebra, and I was like, I guess I'll try and get an edge that way. That's why I turned up in numbers. I mean, there's many things to be fascinated by, well, by all things, really. But I can't claim to have any special relationship or knowledge of them. So that's my answer, I guess. Like, I don't know.
Well, okay, so let's not.
G-Men J and Restream.io, apparently, who are sending us messages in the chat. Appreciate it.
G-Man J, one of our co-hosts, or one of our people here at Going for Two. They have the podcast with Upside. So, hello, Jay. And Izzy, or Ortiz in the comment, does have a question asking who you like in the draft. And it's quite. I know you've got some models, so maybe just mention who you have at the top of those models.
I've recently started ranking these players, for whatever it's worth. Jamar Chase, Rashad Bateman, Elijah Moore, and Rondo Moore are on my first tier at wide receiver, and I like all of them pretty well, actually. But if you're looking for guys that, not everyone maybe has mentioned, Taylor Wallace is getting some noise right now. Dimey Brown has got a pretty interesting profile, and I want to know a lot more about Keelan Stokes, who I think, and Amon-Ra Brown. There's a few names that I don't think are going to be shouted about a lot, and that's kind of where I live. I love undrafted free agents. I love underdogs, and so I like guys that not everyone knows about a lot of the time. So those are the guys that kind of stick out to me. At running back, it's a really weird class. I'm not finding a lot of depth. I can't wait for tape grinders to explain why I'm wrong on that, because I know I see Etne and Harris at the top. Chuba Hubbard looks like he could fit in, but I have some questions. And then there are some receivers, but really there's just those two at the top in that order right now as well. But it's pretty much a first tier together. Tight end Kyle Pitts and Cade Otton. But tight end's kind of the wasteland of evaluation, but I like to try. And both of them are standing out in different ways. And quarterback, I don't know. Ask someone else. I have no idea. Don't care. I don't know.
There's a quarterback question later. Maybe we'll ignore that one. A few comments coming in. Love for Rashad Bateman. I know Izzy himself saying more. I'm not sure which more he's saying though. If it's Rondale or Elijah.
Elijah and Rondo Moore. They're both in my top tier.
So I guess he likes both. Izzy also likes Pitts. So I think there's some agreement there. Now
you can ask me about tight ends. By the way, my whole thing is like I want to know how much I can know and how much I can't know, and so I don't mind explaining why I don't do quarterbacks. Like I think that's, I don't know, maybe that's my thing if I have a thing. Like, I think we can at least know within a reasonable degree of certainty, I guess, what is predictable or what is explainable or what data can tell us or what it can tell us about, because everything's useful. It's just useful for what, right? So, yeah. You can ask me about quarterbacks. I'm just going to end up explaining why I don't know.
All right, which, again, all we're looking for is the truth here. Now, wondering how much the combine in particular does play into your process. And John McGlynn asking a question, how are the analytics guys going to do compared to the tape guys with possible fudged/no combine stats?
Hang on a second. I got to look up someone's name because I was going to use his quote here, and I can't remember his at. If you don't mind pausing with me, for a second, yeah. At Cooper DFF, underscore DFF. I've been talking to Cooper for a long time, but I really just recognize avatars at this point. If you change your avatar, I don't know you anymore on Twitter. That's a basic rule. But Cooper said this better than I can, so there's no point trying to rephrase it. He pointed out that just because something doesn't have a linear relationship to something you're trying to model, this is a fancy nerd thing that he's talking about here. You're trying to predict how many points a player is going to get in the NFL, for example. Just because it doesn't model well, that essentially means it doesn't have a linear relationship. That doesn't mean it's unimportant. It's just, like I was saying with quarterback, it just doesn't tell you that thing. It doesn't mean it can't tell you something else that's important, right? And so my actual answer to your question is, I think it's going to suck harder for tape guys, because I don't care how much you cry about analytical nerds. It's always tape grinders that come at me with combine stats. Because long ago, in the not so far distant past, we figured out combine stats are jack. They don't tell you shit. Like, they tell you nothing. Don't quote it 40 times to anyone that looks at numbers. We don't care. I mean, you know, the famous, the big quote in our thing, I think, is Matt Kelly saying athleticism matters in athletics. And it's absolutely true. Like, he has a way of making a point, you know? That's well said. But combine statistics do tell you whether they're athletic. It doesn't tell you particularly how well that translates to playing on the field or what they do on the field and so on and so forth. In fact, as Matt Kelly was the first one to ever say that I remember saying, at least in my content consuming, a player who is extremely athletic and underproductive is the biggest red flag you can have, because that means he's got all the advantage and still can't produce. That means he's probably just not good. So there are thresholds that are useful for every position. For example, talking about Kyle Pitts, very few tight ends ever produce a top 12 season without being over 250 pounds and over 6'4", I think it is. Now, there are some exceptions, like Evan Ingram, who was prolifically productive in college, basically like a wide receiver, and that's kind of the path for Kyle Pitts to be good in the NFL. So however Ingram plays in the NFL, that's what he has to do, and we're kind of looking for that model. He's not going to be, you know, Travis Kelce, who plays very much more of a traditional tight end role. The guy can block, for example. I think that's normally where the size argument goes to. Can they block? But he's also a prolific wide receiver, so he's on the field more than just receiving, quote-unquote, receiving tight end. And he's a prolifically good receiver. Jimmy Graham, however, fits that mold. Gronk kind of with both, kind of like a Travis Kelce. So there is a path for someone who doesn't fit the threshold to be successful. And so what I've typically come down to is, was the player good? And the best way of deciding that, as far as I can tell, is were they productive? Now, you can define if a player was or wasn't productive by a variety of different ways, and there's where we get nerdy and start threads and people stop listening to us on Twitter. But if their 40 time, their height, their weight, everything at the combine basically has no linear relationship to points per game in the NFL, that doesn't mean it's not important, because I'm pretty sure I would get crushed no matter how good I was skilled at football. If I did have some preternatural talent, like, I'm getting crushed. I get it. But someone like Philip Lindsay, someone like Gerald Everett, frankly, who's been productive despite being very undersized at the position, but productive in college, it gives you an idea of what they have to do in the NFL. So, and describes how they might play or might have to play. If they're very fast, like Tyreek Hill, you probably know he's not going to be a makeshift short area field guy. He's going to have a long distance role. That's what we hope for Henry Ruggs. And so it tells you a lot of stuff. It doesn't have a direct connection to what they produce. The question really is, who are they and are they good at it? And the combine can tell you a lot about who they are, how they're physically made. And their production tells you if they're good at using those skill sets they have. You know, I think I answered the question. I'm going on an event here, so I'm going to shut up. So I care. The main effect to me is I know secondhand this time how big a guy is or how fast they are. I don't trust those numbers as much as I do the pro day, because they're not being tested in the same conditions. But since, like, I barely factor it in, I just want to know if they operate within a certain threshold. Like, does that running back's run a 4.8? Okay. It's looking a little bit less likely unless you're Arian Foster. And so on and so forth. There's almost always an exception, but it's nice when they fit in that range. What I say with the combine is it can be positive, but it can't really be negative because a guy could just be built different. Some people are built different. And we just don't have that box to tick. For me personally, I actually said all analytical guys, but not true. Lots of them like using those thresholds. I like using decision trees over whatever it is I do. So it will affect some. Mostly, I would say don't panic about it so much. And seriously, if someone's quoting combine stats to me, I can guarantee another one of the replies to me was about how good their routes look on tape. It's much more of a. I'm just saying those are typically the people quoting combine stats.
So combine stats not necessarily predictive, more informative about the player, but doesn't predict the production.
It doesn't have a correlation. So to actual points, but that doesn't. That, to be fair, you could say that there's a much higher ceiling for people that are productive and are good in the NFL and are uber athletic. That's true. If you're DK Metcalf, you probably have a much higher ceiling than Keenan Allen, for example. We've seen Keenan Allen have top 12 seasons. He's very good. So's DeAndre Hopkins. They have hit the heights. But it's okay to think maybe they can't reach whatever Calvin Johnson was. Although then again, Antonio Brown doesn't fit. So no, I take that back. Forget it.
Okay. All right.
By and large, more athletic people might have a higher ceiling. Sure, maybe. But if that's the case, then you've got to make a tiny guy score, is what I've been advocating for. Like, if there's a prototypical physical shape for Calvin Johnson type, we should have one for a Stephon Diggs, right? And they are entirely different animals in the top echelon. So, yeah, just saying.
All right, so let's move away from the receivers. Quarterback. So you already said you don't have a lot to evaluate quarterbacks by, but if you go to the market share database, as it's called now, under the quarterback tabs, there's a few things. You have in each position you have your Peter Howard stats, things that you've come up with, and one I've heard you tout a few times for quarterback is the CPOE. So can you just give us, this kind of a bit of an insight, an example to one statistic that you find in this database, and just kind of explain what it means and how you came up with it?
Okay, just before I get owned in like the worst way, because Josh Hermsmeyer is not a guy you want coming after you. CPO is a Josh Hermsmeyer stat at Frisco Josh on Twitter. He writes for 538 now, or whatever that thing's called. He's like actually big. This is his, this is his thing. I'm a huge fan. I find relatively little predictive at quarterback. And in my quarterback tab, I actually don't have a PA Howdy section. Like, I've had almost no luck finding something to really believe in, especially now the rushing edge is basically just gone. Everyone's aware of it. It's factored into draft capital now as well. I've stopped being able to hear you, by the way. I don't know if that's because you're on mute. I'm just letting you know. So you just go around, try and find what the smart guys are doing and try and copy that. That's literally how I started. So mostly my quarterback evaluation process is draft capital, and I listen to, the username I've mentioned before, Sean Slavin22. He writes for 2QBs.com. He's made stats about quarterback, like TNEA. That's in there as well. That's his stat. He came up with it. He calculated it. I'm copying him. CPO is a Josh Hermsmeyer stat.
Oh, okay.
I copied him too because he's smarter and he found something useful. I do like CPO though. It's my favorite one in there, and it's Josh. And I'm hacking it. I don't have his data. He's like got money and paywalls and stuff. I'm just using the raw data we can get publicly. So I'm not actually using. I think he can use ADOT. That's not a publicly available stat for college statistics, as far as I know. So we don't have it. So I'm using like a replacement for it. And essentially what it is a completion percentage over expected for that conference level over the entire history of that conference since 2008, I believe is what he was originally using. And so that's what I'm using. And instead of using ADOTs over a certain threshold, I'm using yards per reception over a certain threshold, which is a terrible replacement, but it's what we got. So it's pretty good. It has one of the strongest relationships to actual points, which is if we're talking about linear correlations. And I think it does a pretty good job of explaining how efficient and successful they were at completing passes, which, according to Josh Hermsmeyer, is the best signal for whether a quarterback is good or not. I also know from the likes of Sean Slavin and other quarterback evaluators that you want experience with youth, weirdly, and they tend to be successful. And also, draft pick matters at quarterback. If you're picked in the top 10 or the top 32, it's not first round, second round. And so, yeah, that's what I know about quarterback.
I mean, again, this just a brief kind of look into just one aspect of one position of this database. So definitely a lot of great things in there. But let's focus more on Peter Howard. Let's get to know the man a little. So who inspired you, like, in terms of creating models? And I mean, you've mentioned Sean a few times. Was there anyone else that really kind of this is how I'm going to create model? This is kind of the blueprint to create all this spreadsheet data.
I love Rashad Bateman 2, Everett 3. I'm just saying. And I loved him first. Not really. His mom probably loved him first. Okay. I don't know how to answer some of these questions. I'm the least interesting thing, and we're talking about spreadsheets. I mean, I don't know why you would. But let's see, what got me interested in it? I want to win, man. I want to win. I want to do better. I want to dance around and call my defeated losers names and have them look up at me and say, I'm going to beat you next year. And then it not happen, so they get really upset. But not in a real sense. That's kind of... I love fantasy football. We all know the experience of playing fantasy football. It's a lot of fun. You've got a community. If your league is a good one, you're getting a lot of back and forth conversations. And I want to play better. I want to do better. And what really got me into it outside of that was I'm getting a lot out of the community, man. I mean, I moved to America when I was fully grown and just finished university and lost my entire family and friendship group, and no one around here knows about the stuff we usually talk about. People bond over common TV shows. They bond over common experiences. And sport was always a language for me. I play sport with people. We could talk about football games, the other kind of football, and it just doesn't exist here. And so I was casting around for hobbies and to be part of a community in my new home. And as part of one of those ventures, someone invited me to a fantasy football league. I said, yeah, sure, I'll try. What's that? And it was so much fun. Everyone, if you're listening to this, God, you already enjoy fantasy football, so you know why it's fun, right? And I kind of got more into it. I got more invested in wanting to win. That's an honest answer. I just want to do better. And this seemed to be a way I could. And then I wanted to give it back because I was having trouble finding stuff or understanding stuff or knowing what I could know as very much an outsider who had I barely knew what fantasy American football was when I started, didn't really understand the rules of the game. I think that's been an advantage in some way. I have very little preconceptions or biases, maybe, but that's probably reaching a little hard. I do try and count my ignorance as potential strength because, why not? Weaknesses can be strength. But it did make me learn the game in a certain way, and it made me learn the game for our thing, not for NFL type rules. Like, I'm okay, just thinking about whether a player is good for fantasy football. I don't need to pretend I know what GMs or coaches should do. How the hell would I know? That's probably why they get paid millions, right? I just want more points this week. I mean, okay. And so it frees me up in a way in that. And as I tried to give something back from a community I was getting a lot of friendships and a lot of enjoyment out of, and trying to, like with this database that we all collectively pool our energies and then make me do all the monkey work to do. I just thought that might be a way of helping too. I enjoyed math. I can work Excel. I've never been particularly inclined that way myself, but I can. And I know lots of people are busy and they don't want to. And lots of people just don't, it's just not my thing. I'm not into math. I'm not into data. So I thought maybe as someone else who's just a layman and not a data friggin' scientist or a PhD expert, I could come to a layman's understanding, do that legwork, and offer that. Like, here's what I found out, layman's perspective. If you spend several hours, a lot of hours, trying to learn it, this is probably where you'll come to. I try and add on top of that, but try and make it very clear when I'm just, that's my opinion, right? Here's the stuff I can know that if you just put the numbers in and work out, that's a percentage, right? And then I try and interpret it. And my interpretation should very much be seen as just an opinion because I'm not a data scientist. But so yeah, it's just all in an effort to try and give back to a community I enjoy. And having followers on Twitter is cool. I mean, don't get me wrong. Don't worry, guys. I'm not making a living off it or nothing. But I really enjoy talking and engaging with this community. And so it's not like I'm not getting anything else out of it, because I really enjoy that. But yeah, that's the motivation. I wanted to get better, and then I thought it's a good way to try and give back, to try and offer what I find, especially since it's all public data. It's just legwork, and countless hours spent away from your family or doing other things that I should probably be doing instead. I'll do it. It's all right. I got you.
Well, and I mean, first off, thanks for taking time out to join us on this. So
right.
So you end up creating all this data, the spreadsheets, grinding through it all to present it all. When did you decide to start, the podcasting realm and the audio and now video content creation? You got the Dynasty Crossroads. So where did all that originate?
Yeah, that's a long, boring story too. No. I don't enjoy talking. I don't know if that's coming across, because when I get to talking, I do tend to run on, and I talk for a lit like I teach, so you have to do a lot of talking there. But in my life, like as an option, I don't, not particularly, and I didn't want to be on screen, and I have no interest in being famous. Like, I'm the only person I know who wasn't like, I'm good not being. I mean, it's actually a lot of fun having a few Twitter followers and having a little community, but the idea of being like look at me. Does it look like a face crying for attention? Like I'm trying to blend in with bushes of it. Just leave me alone. But talking about engagement in the community, eventually it comes up. You're talking to a lot of people, you're making arguments, you're having fun, pretending to, actually care and be emotionally invested, and then you're like, it's good. And eventually someone's like, hey, come talk to me doing this podcast thing. And so that happened a time or two, and I did it, and I found it's really fun arguing with people on podcasts too. And then eventually I went on the Open Bar, which is basically your favorite podcast. It's an amazing place. You've had J. Mike Check on this show, and it's just the most fun you can have online, as far as I can tell. I mean, it's just a group of people arguing and having fun and pretending to be in a bar. Half of them are drunk, the other half are pretending, little known fact, and just having fun. It's like where most of us connect with fantasy football virtually, especially these days. You don't have people in your life who care. Like Charles Bateman, huh? And most people will just stare at you blankly. But online, everyone's fascinating. So you get into a room with everyone on the Open Bar, and it was so much fun. It got me addicted. I was like, I want to do this more, because this is so much fun. And it was actually on my second appearance there. They invited me back. They rarely invite me back anymore. I'm pretty much an asshole. I don't know if it shines through. People eventually get sick of me. I know. I get it. It's fine. But it's a running joke. Sorry. I don't think J. Mike or Gabe are capable of hating anyone. Just throwing that out there, as much as I try to make them. But yeah, I was on there. I think it was the second time, and I think it was John Bosch or someone else in the podcast said me and this other fella on the podcast, Jake, should do a podcast together. We're literally the only ones on there without our own podcasts. And I hadn't, again, like I didn't want to stop podcasting. I definitely didn't want to do my own. How do you, like, I still barely understand how you get your recording into the iTunes world, but it happens, so that's cool. And the fellow who was talking was Jake Anderson, who I've been arguing with pretty much the entire time. I was like, yes, I want to argue with that guy some more. And Jake was willing to do it. I think he was already been doing this a while longer and respected. I've yet to be respected, so that was cool. And rightly so. No need to respect me, guys. Don't worry about it. I wasn't a cry for it. Like, you should. It's good. But yeah, and so afterwards, Jake was like, hey, you wanna? I was like, sure. And then he quit. And I was like, okay. And so now I'm just doing a podcast by myself. I don't know if there was an exit ramp. I'm very much, I just keep going in a straight line, and occasionally someone pushes me in a new direction, so I keep going in that straight line, and no one's stopped me yet. So I just keep making that podcast, even though Jake left. And yeah, that's why I podcast.
I feel like It's
I
like
don't
a
know
graph.
I have no exit ramp in me. I don't know how. I just grind, man. Just straightforward.
It's almost like an exponential graph, right? You're just trying to model that.
It's a
That's
linear relationship between me and where the fuck I'm going. Like, unless you bump me, I really just. No, it's actually, to be fair, that's a feature. Like, my wife gets really mad, and at this point, she's gotten over it because it's a feature. Like, if I'm concentrating on something, I cannot be distracted without a lot of yelling. Like, if we're watching a movie, she wants to ask me a question or tell me something about it, I don't notice. And I know people say that a lot about a lot of husbands, but it's everything. Reading a book, or if my attention gets distracted by something, I'm almost incapable of stopping focusing on it. Like I zero in and the world fades around it, which is I guess why I can mindlessly drone through these spreadsheets, just because straight line, that's the path. I'm very much a very weak bulldozer. If I come up against a wall, I'm just going to be running into that wall the rest of my life. I'm not strong enough to get through it, but I don't know how to turn. So,
I was going to ask you, what advice you give to someone starting out, but it sounds like just ignore the rest of the world and do your thing.
do anything that I don't do. No, I did. I saw you ask J Mike that question. I was like, oh God, I have no idea. I have no idea why I have even a few followers on Twitter or why people enjoy it, but I love the fact that they do. And I'm scared of stopping anything, so I keep picking up new stuff and then doing that along with the old stuff, just in case one of those things is why. Like it's getting bad, man. I'm doing a lot of things now, and I'm too scared to stop any of it. But I would say, and you end up talking to a lot of people, going on a lot of podcasts. Just if you want to, we're here. We'll talk to you about football. It's really no challenge. We're happy to talk to everyone about football. So if you want to come on, you'll end up on a lot of podcasts. And I was thinking about that question that you asked J Mike, and I was like, the best I can come up with is not the be yourself thing, but it's kind of that. It's you have to find your character, and it's not that I think you should pretend to be someone. Absolutely, you always be yourself. That's the point. No one's interested in the person you make up, but you have the freedom to exaggerate when you're doing content or analysis or whatever the hell it is we're doing. Some parts of you. I am very non-confrontational in my real life. You would not believe that, but I'm very much, I get along to get along. I disagree, and I'll tell you I disagree, but I will say what I think and hold to it and change my mind freely if I find information that proves me wrong. Like, that's all part of me, but it's very mellow, like a real person is. We're all just trying to be genuinely good people, react as well as we can, and be good. I honestly think most of us are doing that. But like with fantasy football, you just get to be an a-hole to people. Like, I won! And it's a cathartic release of emotion, because you don't act like that in real life. You're just trying to generally be a good person. It's the same with creating content or being on a podcast. Now, that doesn't mean you have to play a fool, or like I'm a fool. I get it. I play a fool. Because it's already naturally part of me. Matthew Kelly is constantly striving to be entertaining, right? And he's exaggerating parts of his personality about bombasticity and arrogance. I don't think he's either of those things, but he's confident in himself and he boosts them. JJ Zacharyson, perhaps my favorite content to consume, he's straight down the line, he tells an occasional nice 69 joke, but that's really Denny Carter's thing. He's very straightforward, simple, and very easy to understand. His explanation powers are remarkable, but his character, as you are through, I imagine he's got fluff in him and he tells jokes, but when you listen to his podcast, it's all clean. So if that's you, if you're just as straight and as an arrow type of person, you're allowed to experiment with that. What if I didn't just do those other things that are really tiresome to me? Or if you just want to be an a-hole like me a little bit more, because you don't get that, like, do that. And I don't know if this is at all coming across. It might. I don't know if I'm getting my point across, but you're able to exaggerate the parts of your personality that would almost be a little too much to focus on in real life. I love telling a sarcastic joke or being a bit of a troll, but in real life, that's just genuinely mean. With fantasy football, people get it. They're like, yeah, I know, we're just We're doing a thing. We're playing a game. It's fine. And so with content, you can just kind of exaggerate that a little bit. I'm nowhere near as sarcastic or mean or rude as I am when I'm trying to, have fun on a podcast. But the person I'm talking to, or on Twitter for that matter, gets that. They're like, yeah, we're just having an argument. It's fine. We've all accepted this underlying assumption that we're playing a fantasy game right now. In real life, obviously, we would act like regular, normal people to each other. And it's nice to have that area of your life where you're just allowed to be a winner or be a loser. And the other thing I said about that, in content as well, as you rack up content, you get more and more losses. So you have to just be prepared for that. And yeah, I would concentrate on that aspect of it. How are you going to have fun with it? If that can be whatever. It definitely doesn't just have to be creating a character. It can just be experimenting. Maybe you, like me, I'm not really that smart. I'm definitely not a nerd or statistical analyst, and I have no PhD, but I love exploring the idea that I can understand something through numbers, and so I try. And for some reason, I'm not stopping any of it just in case it goes away, but for some reason people are enjoying it, and I guess that's the best rule. If someone's getting some level of enjoyment out of it, I'm good. I'll just keep doing that. Did any of that sound like an answer to the question? Like, just be yourself, but also feel free to play and have fun. Like, we're okay. We get it. You're making content, so you're not meant to just be you. You can have fun with it, whether it's to be straighter or to be more nerdier than you usually are, or more aggressive, frankly, for that matter, or more jockish. There's got to be a bunch of nerds out there who just want to, I just want to be I don't want to be more jockish. Do that. That's fine.
No. I think the main thing I'm getting from that is, there's no limitations. There's no one way you have to do it. Do however you want to do it.
Yeah, I would say do it your way, but that sounds a little bit like the cliche. Yeah, do it your way, just be yourself. But all of that is true. But in practical terms, it's I don't know if that even counts as advice, but don't be afraid to express that part of yourself a little bit more. It's okay to exaggerate, whether it's a comedian, whether it's a clown, whether it's a jock, whether it's a nerd, whether it's the straight of the arrow all-American guy, which I think JJ's going for the all-American superhero look myself, but
I don't know if either of us can judge American properly, but yeah, I think I'd agree with you. But again, skewed outsider's opinion. Maybe we're not biased that way.
Now, in terms of practical advice, do it. I think J Mike said a similar thing to me this on your podcast, and I tried to say it a little bit earlier. Like, the only thing stopping you being on podcasts is wanting to be going on podcasts, because I will literally talk to anyone on Twitter about football if you want to. I'm good. So if you want to engage, or most people in this community, that's what makes it so great, are just willing to talk to everyone. So if you want to write something about it, write something about it. That's fine. And you ask some websites if they like to put it on there, or read it and see if they want to onboard you a little bit, or not. Just put it on a blog and share it with people. And you just start doing it. It's like that lesson when you stop being a kid and you realize the reason you're not getting jobs is because you don't apply to them. You just meant to send the applications, dude. That's the first step. So if you want in, just start sending applications, man. Write the article and start recording the audio, whatever it is. Ask, hey, can I come on your podcast? A lot of people are going to say no because we're assholes.
Yeah.
But a lot are just going to be like, yeah, sure, I'll talk to anyone. I've got a gap in my schedule over here. Why don't you come talk to me? Now, they're probably going to need to know, that you are interested in football, which is why you write the article or you post on Twitter. It's like, hey, here's the kind of stuff I talk about, the stuff I'm interested in. And that's why you need the applications written, as it were.
Yeah, that's the very good application of the use of Twitter and other writing websites. So you have, as you mentioned, you have spoken quite a lot. So I'm not sure if this is,
I don't know why I do that.
I'm not sure if this exists, but I'll ask it anyway. Is there something that our listeners and viewers don't know about you, and if there is, that you're willing to share?
Not really. I'm an open book. No, I don't know. I don't know what they know about me. They don't have I'm no one. I'm not that important. Don't worry about it. Obviously, I just said that, and everyone that listening was like, "Yeah, we know. It's fine." I live in Kentucky. I like fantasy football. I got 2 kids and a wife. I don't know what you might not know about me. Surprising habits. I guess that's the kind of thing you try not to tell people about. I used to be very into woodworking, especially making handles for tools and knives. I love that stuff. And despite playing a nerd most of the time, I'm actually pretty handy with that stuff. I guess that would be unusual. I've ran marathons and half marathons. That's the most successful I ever got at a sport. But I did play a lot of other sports when I was a kid. So yeah, those things, I guess.
Yeah, I think they definitely count. Now, this can be for the Dynasty Crossroads or in any format, but if you could interview any person, who would it be? And I guess if it's the Dynasty Crossroads, you could say Robert Johnson. Here, you named a podcast after your song, but...
No, I did.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, what was the question again?
If you could interview anybody on any podcast or in any format, who would it be?
They might win to Martin Luther King. I mean, what? All of that, bitches. Yeah, we'd all like to talk to Mr. King. Come on, J Mike. No, I'm actually going to keep it in the realm of possible. Like, I've actually spoke to JJ Zacharyson, and that was pretty freaking amazing to me. And he's just as lovable in person, believe it or not. He was a wonderful guy. He's not actually exaggerating a part of himself. He's just that guy. It's weird. Let me see. No, got nothing. It's a good question. I'm really trying not to go the historical, any character from history, like someone to discuss fantasy football with. I honestly don't know. I talk to most of them online. They're all my friends. I love talking to Ray GQ from the Dynasty Destination podcast. I would really like to talk to Zach Reed from the Dynasty Dummy podcast again, but I've done that like 7 times. Like those are like I talk to a lot of people, and I just want to talk to them all again. And if there's someone new, I want to talk to them as well. Like I don't.
You seem like a go-getter. Like anyone you've ever wanted to talk to, you've already done it. Like that's again dedication. You want to do something, go do it. Right? Like that. He's living proof right there.
I just don't have a list. I'm prioritized that way. Like I've been fortunate in that it's turned up. Like I got invited to podcasts like the Open Bar, and they were lots of them were sitting there, and I really enjoyed that. A name did brush to mind, someone I haven't yet talked to, and I was hoping to. Oh no, that was it. Kyle Lebrecht from the Dynasty Dummies podcast. I've talked to him before, like once, I think, and I know him pretty well. We've talked together, but he's taken a step back from podcasting. I'd really like to get a chance to talk to Kyle again, man. I know he's got a new kid and he's going through a lot of stuff, but it's been a while. It's been a minute, and I'd love to talk to Kyle again.
So the big boss Jeff's watching, and mentioning that you name drop our guest in 2 weeks, Ray GQ. So, which again, the purpose of that was. I think I put out a tweet originally talking about balance, and you said you're unbalanced, and it's fine that you're unbalanced, but the show's balanced, right? So you're representing the more analytics approach. Specifically, in this case, we talked about the market share database for college prospects. Ray GQ is going to also talk about from a film watching perspective. So again, bringing that perspective in, and I guess before we get to a couple of last bit of fantasy questions, everyone talks about, okay, I wish I knew this when I was younger. I wish I had this answer, but what's one question that you wished you had asked yourself earlier?
Oh, shit. What are you doing? You mean in terms of prospect evaluation?
It can be. It doesn't necessarily have to just be fantasy, but it can be.
Okay, yeah, we're not going real life. No one should or does care about. Like you don't want to take a life advice. Some guy on Twitter that talks about really. I think no. I don't think I can phrase any of that in a question. I would like to have known earlier. Probably is the way I would say it. I don't know, man. That's a really odd question. And that is a really good question, but it's the type of thing, those quizzes you get where you're meant to like pick your favorite color, or you're meant to test your personality, or what kind of Gilmore Girl are you, or whatever. I'm the one who gets too focused on it to answer. Like, I don't want to set myself in stone. It feels like I have to think about it for a few years.
You have to create a model to see what your optimal answer is going to be.
Like, I want to be sure. This thing's like, I don't want to cast myself as a Kirk before I'm ready. You know what I mean? But yeah, I do that, and that's what I'm doing with this question. So I guess I'll give out the best piece of advice I can, which is not something I wish I'd asked myself earlier, because I kind of started out here, and I've since found no reason to stop believing it. So sorry, that's what you're getting. It's always better to be wrong on your opinion than right on someone else's. That's where I would start if you're playing fantasy football or building an opinion or just trying to develop yourself. Now, you should be willing to change your opinion with new information. You should be willing to develop and take in new perspectives and things you didn't know before constantly, obviously. But at the same time, if you've done your due diligence, I can speak, and made the best understanding of the situation or the player evaluation that you can, it's okay to go all in and be wrong. And I guess that's the way I'd say it. It's like John Bosch is the only one I think still holding out on this. I find losing in fantasy football just as much fun. Well, not just as much fun. I find fun in losing and getting stuff wrong, because I really don't think I could keep going if I didn't. Like, I like standing on a hill and going all in and just being destroyed by it, because there's a sort of fun in this. Like, in life, you're always hedging. You're always being reasonable and trying to make the best decision possible, and you make risk-averse decisions, so, you can still feed your family, but you're going to try things, and you're going to try and get outside your comfort zone within reason. Fantasy football, none of that exists. You could go all in on Rashad Penny and survive. I'm living proof. You can spend first-round draft capital on Rashad Penny, and you don't die. It's a place in your life you can just kind of throw caution to the wind. And I love tilting. I find enjoyment in getting it wrong, and people coming back and saying, hey, remember when you said Rashad Penny had a single-digit chance of not having a top 24 season? Ha! Because, if I can't enjoy that, I don't think I could keep going. And so, however I could frame that as a question when I started out, I guess, are you okay? Can you find enjoyment in getting something wrong as much as you do getting it right? Then continue. If not, then it might not be an area you want to go in too far.
Well, and let's get into the fantasy football area now. I guess we didn't really start on it, but just some quick hitters. So first off, what are your thoughts on zero RB?
You're a fan of these broad questions. Just, hey, Pete, what's with the meaning of? I'll just sit here. Okay. Thoughts on zero RB. It is not commonly well understood, essentially, because it was memeified throughout the fantasy football community to mean something that it doesn't mean. The actual research behind the term zero RB is absolutely true and correct. It's a fundamental fact. And as far as we can understand things, running backs don't matter in that sense. And now for fantasy, they matter extraordinarily well, which is where it starts to get memeified. I think, by and large, the community's move towards the underpinning logic of zero RB has improved the market efficiency on ranking players, and I've lost you again. And it's now an underpinning understanding of dynasty. We have adjusted to it. But it's a valid draft strategy that can still work. And what I do like about zero RB is it's a well thought out draft strategy with a set strategy in mind. Now, you can get tighter and stricter on the restrictions of what is and isn't zero RB, but there's actually a path to follow, and you can go back and look to see if it was and when it was successful and how successful it was. Most draft strategies are just kind of thrown out as common sense sounding narratives. If they are reasonable, that should work, but you can't really test it because there's no set limitations, and so you can't really go back and see how often it would or wouldn't have worked even using ADP. And so it's basically our only draft strategy that has been fully laid out, and I appreciate it for that. And it's also not the only draft strategy. And so what we should take away from it is that we should define other draft strategies more setly to understand how many, how successful, how often. Now, most drafts you shouldn't go into a draft with a strategy. I find the most successful pattern is to lean on the logic behind different draft strategies as a particular draft unfolds to increase your win probability or your win chances is probably the better way of saying it. So that's my broad opinion or thoughts on zero RB. It's valid, it's testable, which is nice with draft strategies because typically our draft strategies aren't testable. It's just something that you say and then you can't be disproved on, and there's nothing less fun about that as far as I can say. In a game, well, like I said, it's not meant to matter. That's what's meant to make it fun. Why would you have an opinion that you can't be proved wrong on? That's essentially dipping your toe in a hot tub. Like, it's a hot tub. You'll have fun. Get in here, man. It might not work, but it's okay. And it might actually be more helpful if you set exact terminology or an exact definition so we can see how much it works. So I guess, yeah, that's what I think is it's valid. It's definitely not always the best thing to do in a draft, but at least it is an actual strategy.
Now, do you have a preferred league format? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, I'm very much a vanilla player. I said this, and it all seems to be disappointing to people, but I think at the heart of the hearts, everyone likes vanilla. Like, vanilla is my favorite ice cream flavor. I don't care what you say. I don't care what you say that means I am. And I like straight up PPR leagues. I do enjoy a Superflex variant. I enjoy starting 2 running backs, which makes them, exponentially more valuable than most of the positions. 3 wide receivers, a flex spot, 1 tight end spot. And I'll play in almost anything. I play in a league run by John Bosch. Believe me, I have seen things. But yeah, I enjoy vanilla mainly because I find fantasy fun in all its formats. I love the Scott Fishbourne that we have to learn a new scoring system every year. That's a lot of fun for me as well. But it's also nice, especially in a dynasty league and not a redraft league, to kind of understand where everything starts. I spend so long learning the benchmarks and the basics of what I can know and then piling crappy interpretation on top of it that I like to look at a trade and immediately know kind of where I am. I like to know how valuable a running back is in a particular trade without having to go check my scoring system. And if you're playing too many different leagues, that's not always true. A trade in one scoring system is terrible, whereas in another scoring system, it's pretty decent. And if I'm in too many varied leagues, like, it gets too complicated, especially when you start increasing the number of dynasty leagues you're in. Like, I like to play. I like the communication with my league mates. I like trading and making decisions and pushing for a win. And if I have to go recheck all my facts of my baseline understanding every time I have to make a move, I end up feeling, what's the word? Stagnated. I don't feel like I can move. I don't really understand what's going on here. And I don't like having to go read a Google sheet. And he says as a stat guy with a database with 130 columns for each position. But, that's the thing. I do a lot of that already. I like kind of my leagues to be simple and understandable and more about the communication. Having said that, again, I've had fun playing in all sorts of different leagues. John Bush runs some fantastic leagues with incredibly complex systems. I highly recommend people checking them out. So yeah, I'm not poo-pooing one kind or the other. It's just, for me, if I get to choose, it's a very standard PPR scoring system.
Well, one of our listeners, Bobby Gilchrist, says he loves vanilla ice cream as well. So you're not alone, Peter. So there you go.
Yeah, hey, Bobby. He's the man. He's my dude.
He's also saying Dynasty Best Ball is his new crush. So I think for that reason of not necessarily having to as much to do with leagues, I suppose.
I like the idea. It does mean I can have more leagues, but again, it comes down to what you enjoy, and whatever you enjoy, just playing that. Like, I don't understand why you would ever worry about it if that's what you're having fun doing. If you enjoy standard scoring instead of PPR, like, you rock out, man. Whatever, I don't mind. I would say Dynasty Best Ball is amazing, but again, where I tend to focus on that, I love the interaction. I love the weekly tilt. I love the waiver wire fight, at least for the first few weeks, at least. I love the constant DM chats in good communicative leads where we're roasting each other, but also saying, "Hey, could I trade for this player every now and again?" With Dynasty Best Ball, the one of the advantages of it, and it's a great thing. I've been in a couple. I'm still in one now. It's a set it and forget it, and that's a great advantage. But where I try and highlight the interaction, Dynasty Best Ball kind of slides me away from that. So I love the format, definitely playing one myself, but it's again, it kind of, because you can set it and forget it. That's kind of its purpose. It takes away from some of that interaction, that communication for me. So that's why it's not my favorite, but I definitely get it. I love not having to worry about waiver wires and start decisions.
Now, okay, less about league format, but is there one rule or setting that you feel needs to be in every league?
No.
Okay.
I was trying to come up with an answer. No, I mean, again, playing a John Bosch league, you just get completely stuff. I do like the idea of having a standard league, not a standard league, but like Scott Fishbowl might be it for us, where everyone gets to play, and that's kind of like the Premiership or the main league, like the NFL of football, so that we're all talking about the same thing. And because, lots of people, everyone who's getting the trade loves to ask other people. And again, we have to check the scoring systems where they're getting so varied. I do love the various formats, but I wish there was also a standard that we all played in. So, like, we could all communicate about, even if we're not in the same league. Now, there is, again, PPR vanilla leagues. That tends to be the average, but then it's Superflex or not Superflex. I love the idea, like a main division in some way that we could all be playing in different leagues. And Scott Fishroll basically functions like that in some ways, but still not everyone is allowed in. And the scoring system changes all the time. So, but no, I wouldn't standardize anything. I think leagues can be multifaceted. Like let's get freaky up in here. That's fine. There's no one rule that should be in anything. But I do kind of enjoy the idea that that could have one place where everything's the same, that like that's the standard go-to conversation, and then we can have all our variants around it, but that's just a side door.
All right, and then if you want, I know, again, not the American football historian necessarily, although you do have some information, but if you will, what's your all-time fantasy QB1, RB1, wide receiver 1, and tight end 1?
Well, they're all undrafted free agents for sure. Again, I'm a fan of a lot of players, more so than teams, and that's what I meant about my Super Bowl comment. It's not that I don't care; it's that I'm more like I get invested in these players. They're marvelous to watch, just amazing the things that they can do. And I do love the underdog story of lower drafted players balling out. And so for running back, it's always been fairly easy for me. Like Arian Foster is like my spirit animal. Like I'm a big fan. He was amazing. And to get anywhere from being an undrafted free agent is incredibly rare. And it's not just because there's less talent there, because we know for a fact there is immense talent there. You got Adam Thielen, you got Arian Foster. We found talent undrafted, so we know it exists. It's such a hurdle to climb. How long did Danny Amendola have to go in the league before he got any kind of recognition for the fact he was better than most of the people he was fourth or fifth string from? And so I kind of love those players the most. And Arian Foster kind of personifies that for me. But Danny Woodhead's very close in the tier, as it were. Right now, to stay current, Adam Thielen at wide receiver, I guess, for a similar story. Tight ends, they're a bunch. Don't make me look them up. But I don't have one that jumps off the top of my head, if that helps. Like, I spend less time thinking about tight end and quarterback, obviously, since I don't have them on the top of my head.
Yeah.
I'm gonna vamp until I find one to pretend that I intimately know all the details of everyone that's ever been good in the NFL, even though I don't. And he's still talking because he's still struggling to find one. Boo Williams. Oh yeah, that's my guy. No, honestly, that's the only undrafted free agent I can see right now with a top 12 finish at tight end. Wow, fairly rare. Yeah, that's probably not the best go-to, but yeah, that tends to be the path I take. I love those underdogs, and I can go searching. But I don't have numbers that jump off names that jump off my head. I will say, if I was going to name a quarterback, I was a really big fan of Andrew Luck, and that's not from data analytics. I just really enjoyed the way he played. I thought his mental processor was. I can't prove it. Again, it's not data. I think it was on par to Peyton Manning. The way he broke down and understood the game, I think that team ruined him, and I'm very mad about it. But he was a first 101, and no one doubted it either. So it's hardly an underdog story, but I do hate the way his career ended. I thought it was amazing. And I have a very strong affinity for Drew Brees, just because even going back, it's incredibly hard to be that good as just a passer. And he's run for a few touchdowns and stuff, but that man's just accurate as fuck. It's a joy to watch. And at tight end, I've always had a soft spot for Jimmy Graham because he doesn't look like the prototypical tight end. People were always trying to count him out. And that's from when I started playing fantasy football, Jimmy Graham was like the best tight end, but there's always kind of a tape grinder he doesn't look like Gronk though, and so I kind of deeply love that Jimmy Graham has continued to be good and better than every other tight end on the teams that he gets traded to, and so I always kind of have a soft spot for him too.
All right, so now I get to the final section of the show. Call it High Fives. I'm not actually going to put my hand on the screen and get fingerprints on, but so top five of just 5 different categories. So we hit them real quick. Start with top 5 artists or bands.
Man, I can sense in your voice when you say real quick, you're like, this guy can't do anything real quick. Unsurprisingly, or surprisingly, I don't. Not that into this stuff, man. I consume music and movies and stuff as a source of entertainment. Books I can get a little more in depth on you, but I don't know. I like a lot of bands. I love AC/DC as a band. I really like Nirvana. I guess they'd be up there. And those kind of bands. I can list off more names, but I don't have an active list. I've never been I really enjoy music. Obviously, I'm not a sociopath, but it's just never been the thing I make top 5 lists about. If you know what I mean?
You don't have music spreadsheets or anything.
Pretty much old rock. Any classic Generation X rock, I'm in. I'm all in. Books. Oh, let's do movies first because that's easier. Harvey is actually my favorite movie, and it's actually an amazing screenplay. So I'll throw that one out there. Books, I start to sound like a real nerd there because I tell you what, I try and stay modern. One that I deeply enjoyed reading was actually a collection of short stories called Girl Trouble by a Kentucky author, actually, whose name I suddenly forgot. But it's one of the best literature I've read since being an adult, put it that way. I was deeply fascinated by that one. I forget names and dates. That's why I was a historian in college, obviously. But there's another Appalachian author who wrote a book called Fathers and Sons. Is it John Brown or something like that? See, you caught me. This is not. My memory sucks, man. I memorize names, dates. I don't. I remember stories. I remember narratives. Names and dates. You should look, frankly. I don't memorize things. I can point to them. I got them back here if you want me to point to them. That's bad.
All right. Well, top 5 game day foods. I think. Do you remember food? Do you know what food is?
I don't have top 5. I don't know why. The people walk around like, oh, Taco just beat out the ring. Like, who does this? I mean, does everyone live their life like a Twitter feed? I mean, I like apples a lot. I really like apples. I think it's an amazing food. Does that count?
Yes, it's food.
Nuts are my go-to snack. Do you want me to list my favorite? Like cashews, almonds. I like food. I don't know what you... It's all pretty good. I have foods I don't like. Obviously, I know those because I avoid them. Most food I can enjoy eating. I don't enjoy celery. I think it's actually trying to kill you because you actually use more calories than you consume from it. So if you ate celery forever, not that anyone would, but you would die. So celery
makes sense, yeah.
And also, it does have a taste, and it's nasty. So I don't like celery. That's actually it. That's pretty much the only food I don't like. There you go.
All right. Well,
and apples. There you go. I like apples. Hate celery. Who cares, man? Who cares? What is it?
I guess. Well, I mean,
Bob Gilchrist, are you sitting on the edge of the seat? Like, I've been waiting to find out Pete's favorite food for years. This is a moment, and I've disappointed you because if so, I'll make some up, man. But like,
so anyway, the last normal question for the top 5 section is any fantasy football rules that you despise and want to avoid.
What are the fantasy football? Oh, you mean like settings in a league?
Yeah, just any.
I don't. Like I said, I'm pretty much whatever you want your settings to be. I'll play in anything. I don't hate or despise IDP, but I'm still getting my ass kicked by wide receiver and running back. So the idea of expanding the pool of positions I need to learn about terrifies me because it's pretty much a full-time job right now, and I'm not doing well. So I don't despise it or hate it, but it terrifies me. I don't know how Tom Kittleberry does it, but he does it somehow. So all power to him. I don't not like, but I don't see the point of tight end premium. It just exaggerates the differential that already exists, essentially making more tight ends less relevant instead of more tight ends relevant. So I think that did the opposite of what it intended. Whereas Superflex, like if you do the same with Superflex as you do to tight end, that actually increases its value. So I don't understand tight end premium. I guess that counts as a hate. Salary cap. John Bosch is maybe playing a salary cap league, and I hate. Again, it's like IDP. Like I'm struggling to master because we still don't always win, and you're going to add a whole new layer of calculate. Like, thanks, John. Yeah, thanks. So again, I don't hate them. I can. They're all fun. They're all enjoyable in their own way. But I guess my strong tendencies away from that would be it. Is that 5? Did I get to 5 of any of these?
I think you got to 5 combined, so we'll count that.
Actual lists out. I know people tweet that out all the time, but you notice they're on the internet and they're looking for clicks and retweets, so they get to sit down and make a list and make it sound like they have a top 5 or something. It's just what you like. Come on, Gary, don't fall for this. We want to have an actual top 5 list. Green Day, that's another band I listen to a lot. There you go. I think I'm up to 2. We're going to be here a while.
So we'll come back next year and we'll see if we get to numbers 3 and 4.
I refuse. I'm not living my life this way. All food is good. It feeds you.
It's funny because
all sorts of books. I don't need to rank them.
And enough time making models. You want to avoid making rankings anywhere else, right?
I make models to try and understand things better. Ranking my top 5 doesn't make me understand the book better. Come on.
Sure. I mean, it helps everyone else understand you better, but yeah, you get no knowledge of doing it.
No, this is like these quizzes from earlier, and it feels too much like define yourself in 5 books. I'm multifaceted, man. I read Dan Brown once. I hated the shit out of it, but I read him. I mean, it doesn't define me. I'm reading. Okay, this is old, but yeah, there you go.
Yes. Apparently, everyone else is laughing. We're getting Gary saying this is hilarious. So I think entertainment, right? That's what we're here to provide. And Peter, thank you for providing us with entertainment.
I would leave with a serious note. One of the best and most underrated writers in terms of poetry of use of language, and this is one I like to bring up, is actually what's her name? Damn, I forgot it. No, Agatha Christie.
Oh yeah.
her prose actually compare in a similar way to Hemingway to me, and that's not a comparison you're going to hear many ways. She has a simplicity of language that is frankly underrated. I also deeply enjoy Arthur Kessler, if you're interested in some Russian novels. But he wrote in English, interestingly enough, and they're deeply well-written books without the thick heaviness that Russian novels sometimes come with. I really do strongly recommend Girl Trouble as a series of short stories. So, those are my shout-outs. And if you're looking for a historically significant novel, the one I always recommend to my students when they ask for this kind of list is actually a book called, and it's a little bit of a nasty title, it's called The Rape of Nanking. And it's mainly because it's an area of history that was almost entirely invisible to at least us in the West. And Mary Chang, one of the most remarkable historians, for my money, in my lifetime at least, because she uncovered this whole area of history that we're wantonly or maybe unconsciously just ignoring, which is about this period before our World War II starts, and it begins for China with Japan. And in the West, especially, we learn World War II is starting in 1945, but there's this whole area of conflict that really can be roped into the entire conflict of World War II, which, again, we're almost totally unheard of. And so, yeah, that's actually my top 5 recommended list, but top 5 favorites, I don't make me choose to my children, man. Read books. They're awesome.
Good. Yes, a positive message and promoting reading, and that's.
I'm pro-reading, damn it! I don't care who challenge us. Who's anti-reading? Really? That's why it's such an easy thing to say.
No, I mean that's true too. So it's not fun, but I guess if the anti-reading group had meetings, they'd put up signs, but no one would know where to go to meet.
Okay.
So
that's very true.
Okay, and I'll go with saying, Peter, thank you very much for joining us. I know you're at PA Howdy on Twitter. You got the Dynasty Crossroads, and of course all the databases you have. Is there anything else you wanted to share with the listeners and the folks?
No, I'd just like to thank you for asking me to come on. I had a hell of a time. Sorry being from the least prepared guest you'll ever hear. I'm sure I'm very underprepared. He gave me a shout out here. He's dealing with a lot right now, and he did great. I think you'll agree with me. So I appreciate it, man. Thanks very much.
Well, I guess hopefully we have a ton of episodes to find out if you're the least prepared or not. We'll have a lot of data to work from, hopefully, at the end of all this. But I'm Kyle Senra at Senra Says. Everything at Going for Two can be found at Going for Two Live as well, or at Jeff Lambert 77. Big Boss Jeff's always tweeting everything out. And we've got tons of live programming for this off season. So feel free to check that out. Always Going for Two at all your streaming platforms. Once again, Peter, thank you, and to everyone, good night. This is Press Coverage.